The morning he missed a scholarship interview, the house smelled like burnt toast and disappointment. And his mother's breath came in those quiet, worried sighs that stabbed more than shouting. He stared at the cold phone alarm he'd swiped away 3 times and told himself it wasn't his fault. The sky was heavy. The sheets were warm. The world could wait. At school, they called him lazy boy like it was printed on his forehead. Ever had a name stick to your skin like oil? He wished he could peel it off without tearing himself. But how do you start when starting hurts? By noon, the notice board coughed up another consequence. Saturday, public skills trial. Cleanup, stage setup, and a time problem-solving test. Open crowd, no excuses. The whisper traveled faster than chalk dust. He'll skip. He always does. Near the supply closet, the janitor, Mr. Hale, moved his mop like a quiet violin bow and said, almost to the floor, "Try 5 minutes, kid. Not an hour. 5. A stranger's mercy can feel like a handrail in the dark. Could laziness be smaller than he feared? Just friction dressed as failure? He set a 5-minute timer after dinner and opened the practice sheet. The kettle hummed. The window rattled. A neighbor sneezed like a trumpet. He wrote 2 lines, then blinked too long, and his pen skated into a black puddle of ink. He laughed, then hated the sound. He made instant coffee that smelled like old pennies and promised himself a fresh start at exactly 9. At 9:02, he was scrolling highlights, thumb on autopilot, mind zipping nowhere. What if lazy is just rust? What if it scrapes off but squeals first? He tried another trick. Do the smallest possible version. 1 push-up while the toothpaste fizzed. Shoes tied before touching the phone. Read a single paragraph while the kettle's tiny hiss counted seconds. Little wins felt stupid. Then, weirdly alive, he wrote a list titled, 5 minutes is not nothing, and taped it to his door. Outside, late wind carried fried onion smells from the corner stand and the metallic echo of a trolley. A ping. The school app said the scholarship committee would attend the Saturday fair. Chance returned like a bus he'd once missed. Would he climb on this time? On Friday, Principal Diaz announced the rolls. Maybe she measured pain with a ruler, because she handed him the worst one. Stage lead, called time 6 a.m., answerable for lights, cables, and every screw that rolled under the bleachers. Public, loud, unhideable. He wanted to melt into his hoodie, to say, "You know me, I mess things up." But there's a special cruelty in quitting before anyone can blame you. He shoved his hands into pockets full of nothing and nodded. If shame is a room, Saturday would be all windows. How do you hide when the glass wants you seen? Dawn came with wet pavement and a tired moon. The field smelled like damp plywood and last night's rain. His friend Lucas texted late bro, then sorry bro, then nothing. The rental truck arrived missing 2 light stands. The supplier washed his hands of it, and a gray bruise of clouds sat over the bleachers. When the first test light flickered and died, a hot metal wreath curled up from the board. He almost had the line he always said, "It's not my kind of thing." Mr. Hale tightened a wingnut with easy wrists and murmured, "Used to tour with bands. You lead. I'll spot." They built in 5-minute sprints. Lay cable until the timer chirped, then breathe. Coil the snakes. Tape the seams, label the channels. The tape ripped with that satisfying rip. The gaffer's smell stuck to his fingers. His shoulders burned, and the burn felt like proof. Twice he reached for his phone, and twice he shoved it away, laughing at himself because it was like bargaining with a hungry cat. When did his feet start moving faster than his doubt? How many tiny clicks does a life make before it finally turns over? And what if the engine was willing all along? By noon, the field filled with chatter, oil pop from food stalls, and kids dragging balloons that squeaked against jackets. The mayor's aide rehearsed a speech while a saxophone tested lonely notes in the wind. Principal Diaz looked at him like she was waiting to be disappointed and was trying not to be. He checked the power grid one more time, counted outlets, listened to hum. The old mic worked. The new one didn't. He told himself, 5 minutes, not forever. Breathe like the cables breathe. If failure shows up, can you keep your hands moving anyway? The mayor stepped up. The crowd went quiet, and the mic picked that exact moment to cough, crackle, and die. A clean, merciless silence spread. the kind that magnifies the sound of your own bones. Someone in the back snickered. Lucas finally arrived, smug and late, and yelled, "Classic lazy boy." The principal's eyes narrowed, and the word "why" floated above his head like a cruel halo. He dropped to his knees, slid under the riser, tasted dust, caught the lemon-sharp tang of failing cable, and yanked the spare he'd labeled earlier. Tape twist, test, 3 T's, 5 breaths. Would it sing? Sound slammed back, warm, full alive, and the crowd exhaled in one pleased animal. The mayor laughed into the revived mic. "Good morning, and thank our stage lead for save." People clapped without knowing his name, which stung and soothed at once. He looked at Lucas, who still held the dead mic like a trophy of nothing, and handed him the working one. "Take it. Say your line. There's more victory in fixing than in gloating." Mr. Hale tapped his shoulder once, like a coach who keeps his applause in his pocket. Funny how quiet praise can ring louder than fireworks. After the speeches, the fair unraveled into sugar smells and game booth bells. He stayed by the board, guarding it like an organ transplant. Principal Diaz came by with a paper cup of water and said, "You were here at 6. It wasn't a question, and somehow it was the kindest sentence in weeks. He shrugged, then surprised himself and said, 5 minutes at a time." She nodded, and the nod felt like a door opening. Maybe laziness hadn't been a personality. Maybe it was a stuck zipper. Did he tug hard enough today to free it? Evening slid in with orange light on metal edges, and kids dragging sleepy balloons like moons on strings. His mom arrived late from work, hair smelling faintly of flour and salt, and just held his face with both hands the way she did when he was small. He wanted to tell her everything. The mist morning, the ink puddle, the cheap coffee, the tape ripping, the way fear shrank when his hands were busy. Instead, he said, "I didn't hide." She laughed softly and cried a little, and that mix felt like a new alphabet he could finally read. He didn't win a medal because there wasn't one. He won a list on a folded card in his pocket. 5 minutes, not forever, smallest possible version. Tie shoes before phone, label cables before panic, breathe in 4s. He set his alarm for 5:55 the next day and placed his shoes by the door, laces loose like a welcome. The city's night hummed under the window, and a bakery down the block exhaled warm air that smelled like courage pretending to be bread. If laziness is rust, let it flake. Tomorrow, you and I could try 5 minutes together, will you?